Well, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Xandermonium, the talk show that gets you talking. I'm your host, Xander Gibb, and today, along with my co-host, broadcaster, libertarian, and freethinker, Tony Losacco, I will be looking at this week's hottest topics, and we will be taking your calls on the issues that count for you. More to come in a mere moment. So you can interact with us during the show in the chat room at the bottom of the page. Keep scrolling down. Now, if it's not letting you type in the chat, you need to join with Facebook or Twitter, and it will allow you to comment and join in and weigh in on what's going on in the chat room. So you can also call us with your questions and comments on 347-884-9061. That's 347-884-9061. Or you can tweet us. You can tweet me at Xander Gibb, Xandergibb. And you can also tweet Tony at FullStory2014. That's FULLSTORY 2014. Now tweet me if you're too shy, and I will make your point for you. Oh, yes, I will. So the unrest between Israel and Palestine continues, and whilst everyone takes their side in the conflict, most while not being in full receipt of all the facts, the situation fully fuels divisions and incites race hate throughout the world. In France and Germany, among other places, anti-Semitism is on the rise, and chanting death to Jews is reminiscent of Nazi Germany under Hitler's rule. Now, we have to remember in all of this, those of us who do not live in the area are really only getting perceptions of the conflict from the media, and that perception is relative to their position on the politics of the situation as they see it. Those on each side of the conflict want to match dead child for dead child and rely on this as a benchmark for who is right and who is wrong, which is kind of alarming to say the least. Now, my friends and relatives who live in Israel have recounted to me their perspectives of the issue and their feelings in general that people are very scared right now. Now, for any ceasefire to work, it's imperative for both sides to adhere to said ceasefire, or that will fall apart very quickly. We have to separate Palestinians from Hamas, as Hamas, let's face it, a terrorist group whose aim is to eradicate Jews and Christians, and they are the aggressor here. Now, Israel is vilified for defending itself, and are they surely entitled to do that? Even Palestinians do not want Hamas there, and clearly Hamas has a brilliant PR machine, and if Israel boo-hooed every time they were attacked, the picture would be very different, I assure you. Now, any loss of life is unacceptable, regardless which side of the conflict they are on, let alone children losing their lives. Hamas has built tunnels under schools and hospitals in built-up areas and are placing weapons storage facilities in heavily populated areas. And when these facilities get hit, the Israelis are bad again for doing this. Now, there are clearly rights and wrongs on both sides of this situation, and we pray for peace before these two sides obliterate one another. Now, regardless of my leanings, I do see both sides to this conflict, and I pray that peace will come soon. So, whilst it was pleasing to see Obama had called for the release of an Israeli soldier who had been kidnapped by Hamas, who has apparently been revealed that the person is actually dead. He has still not to date done anything to secure the release of our brother Andrew Tamarisi, who is still in jail in Mexico. So please lobby your senator and President Obama, who seems to be ignoring the situation, and check out Free Our Marine on Facebook and Twitter and show your support. If you'd like to come and get on your soapbox, please email us at xander@xandergibb.com. That's xander@xandergibb.com. So joining me to break down this week's hot topic is a broadcaster, a libertarian, and a free thinker, the one, the only, my good friend, Mr. Tony Losacco. Welcome to the show, Tony. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Xander?
I'm doing really well, thank you. So, what's your week been like? What's really kind of caught your eye in the news this week?
I think, like you, the Israeli and Palestinian thing has really caught my attention. It's a shame that there's women and children dying because I can't even call them nations, but two groups of extremists and terrorists, and I do mean both sides being extremists and terrorists, can't come to an agreement, and they want to put women and children in the crossfire.
Right. So do you think that? What do you think is the solution to all of this? Do other countries need to get involved? Does the UN need to do something? What actually needs to happen in order for this to be sorted out?
Well, this is going to be very libertarian of me. I'm going to take the party line on this one, and I'm going to say, mind our own damn business. It's a tragedy, but it's not our concern. These two peoples who are really interrelated and interconnected, fighting for a very long time, goes back to ancient times as we know, but I'm not even going to go there. They will continue to fight, and this is the way of the land. I mean, we didn't have people interfering in our civil war. It's not specific to Israel. Like, we want to go to Syria, we want to go to Ukraine. It's just not our concern. This is the whole idea of the United States ruling the world, policing the world, a new world order, globalism, which, as you know, I'm totally against. That doesn't make me feel bad about the tragedy, but they need to work it out for themselves, and especially in a situation where you're not having clear sides and clear definitions with flags and this and that, there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. It's got to come from them themselves.
Exactly. And I think the thing that really infuriates me, I mean, obviously I have leanings in one particular direction, but I still try to be objective. But what kind of bothers me is that the world and his wife on social media thinks that they're an expert on this. And they just hear about dead children, and that's it. That's the side that they pick. But it clearly goes a lot deeper than all of this. Now, let me ask you this, Tony. Do you think America would have gone into Israel and even places like Syria that you mentioned earlier if there had been something like oil there or, some natural resource to tap into?
I know that's a charge that a lot of people, especially on the left, like to make against our country, but I honestly do believe it. I believe it goes much further than oil and defenses. I don't think it involves greed. I think it involves good old-fashioned American superiority and pride, thinking we're the biggest shit in the world and we know how to run the world for everybody else. I really don't think these matters have to do too much with, not saying that in the past they didn't, but I think it's really more about we know how you should live, we know what should be done, follow our standard or else.
Exactly. I mean, I think that you quite rightly said that this has been going on since biblical times. It's been going on forever, and the both sides of this have never kind of been able to agree. And the concern for me is the loss of life on both sides while this disagreement is actually going on. Now, I just think that what we have to do is we have to pray for peace. And we have to pray that God will intervene and that there will be some lasting peace. But I think that people have been doing that for a long time.
Well, and you know how my blog on Twitter, when I do go on it and active, is called The Full Story? There's a full story to this where both sides are wrong and neither side wants to be admitting. So I'm going to be called, I guess, an anti-Semite on the one hand by saying this. Okay, so guilty if you want to call me that for the viewing audience, and guilty if you want to call me anti-Arab for saying this part of it. But there's a split down the middle here, which is the truth, which is the first part of this is that Israel, the nation of Israel, started off just like the Palestinians. They were originally called Palestinians. The Jerusalem Post was originally called the Palestinian Post because that was the area, Palestine. And the Jewish people, they love to talk about anti-terrorism. Go back in your history books. They did these same things that the Palestinians are doing, just like Nelson Mandela did the same things. This is how these groups start, with car bombs, with missiles, with terrorist actions. They're all the same. So this whole notion of Israel being the innocent victim here, they did the same thing to the British under the British Mandate. These are the same people. Their first leaders were terrorists at first. Doing it to Britain, just like in Northern Ireland, in the IRA. It's the same form. They've just become legitimized because now we call them a nation and a state, but they've done the same tactics. And really, with what they're doing to the women and children in the UN schools and everything, and callousness towards civilians, is a form of terrorism. They're just using an army and not small arms to do it. On the other hand, the Palestinians, there was never such a thing as a Palestinian nation. It never existed. This was created after Israel became a nation. There was never in history a Palestinian state. There is no such thing as a Palestinian people. It's a fabrication. Israel's telling the truth about that. It was created politically. They were always Arab people. There were always Jews and Arabs, and they all lived together in that area of Palestine. So on the one hand, the real story is there is no Palestinian people. It's a political creation. On the other hand, the Jewish people began as terrorists too, and are using terrorist tactics as well.
Right. I mean, I can see your point of view on that, but I want to go back to something that you said earlier about this. That now, if you agree with Israel, then you're anti-Palestinian. If you agree with Israel, then you're anti-Semitic. Why as a nation? Well, why do people need to say that you're anti just because you disagree? I wrote an article about this a while back. I called it Xanderphobia. So if you disagree with me, then you're Xanderphobic. I'm really sick of this. That if you don't agree with a certain thing, people said for long enough that if you didn't agree with Obama's policies, it was because you were racist. Couldn't it possibly just be that his policies were faulty? I'm sick of this jumping to the conclusion right away that if you disagree with someone, but you're a phobe. I mean, surely it goes a bit. I'm not saying sometimes it's not that. I'm sure there's some people out there that are totally racist, totally anti-Semitic, totally anti-Muslim, but that's not to say that every decision everybody makes them a phobe. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely. I mean, that's like with affirmative action. Oh, so what? I'm a racist because I disagree with affirmative action now, or if I'm say against gay marriage, not saying I am or not, then I'm homophobic. I mean, there is a climate in this country. And it's very, very sad. And it goes, by the way, I've done some research lately online about globalization and where it's coming from. It's really honestly part of, from my research, and I have to study up more on it to be honest, this whole trend towards globalization and the New World Order. Basically what it's going towards is, and I'm not talking the realm of conspiracy theory either, don't misunderstand me. I'm talking about international movement where the world is one and there's one standard, whether it's human rights, whether it's political rights, whatever it is. But there's this whole movement in our society and in countries and internationally to go towards one world system. And this is the system, and if you don't agree with this, the way it is, these are the standards we're setting out, then you don't deserve to speak, or you need to be re-educated, and you're a hateful person or you're a bitter person. And it's wrong. People are not having the freedom to disagree anymore or think for themselves. If you don't agree with the current thinking, you're ostracized.
But I think, do you not think part of this is to legitimize things? I'm sorry to use the Obama example again, but a lot of people use the racism thing to legitimize bad policies. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do, and it's a shame because, Rand Paul and both Cory Booker, who I'm a real fan of, too, from Newark, New Jersey, who got elected to the Senate recently, are getting together on a really great piece of legislation. And this is typical Cory Booker. Where he worked with the governor of New Jersey, too, who was a Republican. Him and Rand Paul are getting together, and they're saying there's racism in this country. We need to fight it. And they're saying it's in the criminal justice system. There's a 60 to 70% portion of minorities arrested and convicted. There's something wrong with this picture here. But they don't want to talk about that because it's a real issue. Nobody wants to deal with the real issues. They'd rather create fake issues like, oh, well, you're against affirmative action, you're a racist, or you didn't like President Obama, so you're anti-black. No, nobody wants to deal with the real issues that are significant.
It goes back to our free pizza analogy that we've used before, because if someone's standing and giving out free pizza, you're not looking at the bank that's being robbed across the road or the car that's being stolen around the corner. It's kind of like all of these things are, to me, are very subversive, because at the end of the day, we still see that these things are going on, but while we're eating the free pizza, we're kind of distracted momentarily by these things. I think that's very honorable that they're getting together about this, because a lot of people would say that there is no racism in America. You know, we're very polite. We don't even repeat the N-word when someone said it. We'll call it the N-word rather than saying it. But it's not just about the language of racism. It's about ethnic minorities not being given jobs or being treated differently on the grounds of the color of their skin. And it's so much deeper than just the pleasantries of not using the N-word.
No, and that's the thing. It hides the real problem. It's so easy to attack somebody like Paula Deen for a word slip or whatever and go after something like that than it is to reform the system and the things that are wrong with the system. And it's funny because the people that are still oppressed, whether it's the homosexual community or whether it's the African American community or regardless, they fall victim to the trap, and they fall into it because they have their political wings that are pushing to extremes as well, where they single out on these issues. But when they make issues that aren't legitimate, it takes attention away from what's really going on. In fact, I think going back to the Zimmerman trial, I mean, I hate to bring up a sore end there, but going back to the Zimmerman trial, I think people might have reacted a little bit different, but there started to be a big split between white and black towards the end of that trial. If you were white, it was like you were for Zimmerman, and if you weren't, I mean, that's the reality of how that wound up playing out. But I think that was the result of years and years of white people being told they were racist. I think, honestly, if there was less of a focus on that and less of a false hysteria, people might have looked at that Zimmerman thing and said, yeah, that's not right under any standard. That was wrong. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but I think that it was a reaction, you know, based on years of being told you were racist and you had all your rights and white privilege, and then something legitimate happens and white people are like, we're sick of hearing it. We've heard this for years. This is all crap. And they dismissed it instead of looking at it and saying, wait, what is this going on, you know?
Right. You know, I've actually been vilified by the LGBT community because I've actually said publicly that I didn't think that everyone that was not for gay marriage was homophobic. And to me, you know, just logically, you know, I have Christian philosophies, and just even breaking it down on a religious ordinance basis. It was understandable that some Christian people would have an objection to gay marriage, as in not civil ceremonies, but holy matrimony for two people of the same sex. Because I drew that analogy, I wasn't supporting my community. I was homophobic. I'm gay, but I'm homophobic. I'm sick of people going to those places about can we agree to disagree? You know, there are so many things that people will disagree on. Why can't we just, we don't agree. We don't have to agree. Do we have to agree on everything? You know, you and I have been friends for some time now, and although my political affiliations have changed vastly since I first knew you, I'm sure there are still things that we don't agree on, but do you and I, Tony, have to agree on every single thing to be friends?
Absolutely not, and that's what I told somebody on Facebook months ago. I don't know if you recall when I was upset about somebody posting very, very hurtful things towards me, personal attacks based on an opinion post, and it was like, please don't do this. Just say you disagree and state your points, and let's have an honest an open debate.
Right.
Let's stop
exactly.
the name calling. What's interesting about that, and I do have to point this out, I think I might have pointed it out last time, there is a large, see, when I hear somebody like Sarah Palin or Michelle Bachmann, and I'm not picking on women, so nobody's saying I'm anti-woman, please, but this is to mention two of them, or Senator Cruz, there, I don't want to get accused of being anti-woman there.
Right.
When you hear these people talk, when you hear these people talk, they stink of ignorance. Like, you hear them talk and it makes you laugh. Like, they don't have their facts in a row or they're repeating bylines. But that's the right. I respect the right in their ignorance when they do that, because you know what, with the left, and it's something, I don't know what it is in the water with left-wing progressives, but nobody's allowed to disagree with them. The minute you disagree with a left-wing progressive, that's when those labels come in. You're a homophobe, you're hateful, you're this. I've heard things like you should go to jail from people, you should be re-educated, you should lose your citizenship. I mean, it's crazy.
It's totally crazy because I mean, I keep getting told we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic, but we do live in a republic that operates as a democracy. So surely we should all be allowed that freedom of speech to say what we want to say.
I mean, even Fox News. Fox News is a good example, actually. Fox News, whether it's Bill O'Reilly or whatever, they'll state their opinions, but they'll be more than happy to have the other side state theirs. You know, they might gang up on them and everything and twist things, but they'll let the other side state their opinion and they invite them for dialogue. That's been my experience dealing with any right-wing conservative. They want to talk, they want to get their view out there, they want to debate, and they feel they're right, whether they're right or wrong, they feel they're right sincerely. But when it comes to the left, they don't even want to talk to you, and they just want to put all these labels on you. You're not allowed to disagree with them. With the Affordable Health Care Act, I remember when it first came out, I debated this guy. It was at a private party or whatever, and he was so progressive, so into it, and you know, he told me how anti-American I was because I was against health care reform, and his whole defense was, I read the Affordable Health Care Act. Okay, but did you understand it? Did you know what it meant? Does that qualify? Right? Does that qualify you? And he told me about all these great books he read and institutions and this, and I'm like, but you're not thinking in terms of common sense. And if I can't even state my disagreement to you without you calling me anti-American in names, how much of an intellectual thinker are you really? Did you think about the consequences of this?
Well, I have to say, I used to feel exactly the same about all conservatives and all Republicans until I met my good friend, Dr. Gina Loudon, who was prepared to talk about the issues, who was prepared to criticize Republican doctrine and policy, et cetera, et cetera. It was like a breath of fresh air to me. I'm sure there are lots of people out there that are like her, and I've met them too. But I just feel that we all have to stop generalizing. We all have to take a step back. I mean, yes, there are people out there that are like this, and that's fine to term those in those terms, but we have to stop generalizing, because when we do that, we actually put everyone in the same box, and we don't want to be put in the same box. You know, like with certain generalizations, and I think that we have to afford that right to others too.
And you know, it's funny, back to the whole thing we're talking about, gay marriage and everything, there was a story I did read in the news recently, which just goes to show how the one issue overtakes the other and the other one doesn't even get the news. This didn't even make the national news, and this should have been front page in my book, across every newspaper, every major news network. There was a gay man fired from a youth home, Christian-run youth home, simply because they found out he had a boyfriend and because he was gay. And they fired this man, not based on anything, because he was a bad influence on the kids.
Wait,
he was a youth
when was
worker.
this? When was this, Tony? Because has Enda been signed in yet, or was this pre-Enda?
This happened this week. I came across it on the news. I wish I could remember where I came across the story, honestly, but I've seen it this week. It might have been yesterday or the day before, and it was a children's home, a Christian children's home, that this man was fired for just because
wow.
he had a boyfriend and they came across it. And I was like, is this really happening? But everybody's so up in arms about gay marriage. This man lost his job and was probably making a difference in children's lives. But it was in Texas.
It is very, but Texas seems to be very anti-gay, unfortunately, and I'm so glad that they didn't add in this clause about the religious organizations being able to refuse, because in England they put all of these similar laws into place. On the Roman Catholic Church, I think we've talked about this before. They said they shouldn't have to be to hold up that law because of their religious beliefs, and the British government said, no way, you obey the law or you face the penalty. And I was like, yeah, go. That's really the way to go. And I'm so glad that Obama didn't. I'm so glad it didn't get added to it. But
well,
in those politics. Go on.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say I changed my opinion of that actually. That last news story I talked about changed my opinion. I was on the other side of that, thinking, yes, they're religious. They have the right to run their own business the way they want according to their religion.
Right.
They should be allowed to do it. And that's what I thought until I heard that story. But I was a youth care worker for 10 years. That could have affected me. So now, like any thinking person, I've changed my thinking, and my thinking on that one is, if a private Christian organization wants to have their own religious doctrines and they don't need to serve the general public, then stay in a church. That's my view on that now.
Right. I do see both sides of this. It was like when the governor of New Mexico went to get her hair done, and this hairdresser said, I'm not doing your hair because I don't like your stance on gay marriage. So it does work both ways. If he can say, I'm not doing your hair because you're homophobic, then why shouldn't Christians be able to do? I just think it just gets ridiculous. I mean, what next? I don't want to serve you because you got blue eyes. I don't like people with blue eyes. Don't come in my store if you have blue eyes. Do you know what I mean? It's just
I do.
Really,
and as a libertarian, I have mixed feelings on that as a libertarian, because as a libertarian, I believe you should be able to discriminate in your business, your housing, whatever, private choice. But you have to, like you've pointed out, and many other my progressive friends have pointed out, that's not anarchy. It can't be everybody just do what they want. You have to have some basic standard where I can't go to a grocery store if it's the only one in my neighborhood and be denied food, for instance, because of my sexuality or my skin color or anything. You have to set some sort of limit somewhere, and that's the thing.
Absolutely. Well, it's time to move away from politics, and it's time to talk about the Biebs. Our little friend Justin Bieber. Now, while it was mildly amusing, and I don't really hold truck with violence, but I did, like most people out there, have a laugh at the news that Orlando Bloom threw a punch at Justin Bieber in Ibiza. I never know whether to call it Ibiza or Ibiza this week. Bieber ducked the punch, but then yelled, "What's up, bitch?" before the two men were separated. I thought that was a hilarious response myself. Now, it went down Wednesday morning at Cipriani, and reports are conflicting, but it's believed that Bloom lashed out because Bieber made disrespectful comments about Orlando's ex-wife model Miranda Kerr. Back in 2012, the Biebs was seen cozying up to Kerr. Fast forward to April of this year when Orlando, 37, was photographed talking to Justin's on-again, off-again girlfriend, Selena Gomez. Apparently, Diddy, Paris Hilton, and Lindsay Lohan all cheered when Justin left the venue. So what do you make of all this, Tony? Is our little Justin heading for a spin?
I don't know. It's probably not over because these things tend to, one, get them publicity, and two, it seems like these Hollywood types hold on to things a lot longer. I mean, I don't know what to think of that. He's been in a lot of trouble lately, and it seems like the media just clings to any Justin Bieber story there is, but he's getting to that point in his career, I think, where he's got to do something with himself. And maybe this is part of that transition, maybe, where he's trying to do the, the Disney actor thing, where it's like, okay, I had the sweet innocent face, and now I'm going to be the bad boy sort of thing, and maybe a lot of this is deliberate.
Kind of like Miley Cyrus did, you mean?
Right, yeah, I couldn't think of the name, right? Maybe it's kind of like a lighter version of Miley Cyrus, and this is all deliberate. Or maybe it's just a kid on his own, growing up, and we pay a lot of attention because kids will be kids, but because it's Justin Bieber, everything makes the news. It sounds, honestly, like typical kid stuff,
Right. This is the thing for me. I don't think he's particularly like a musical genius or anything like that. And I think with some musicians, they have a couple of good albums, but then they're like, what the hell do I do now? However, I think that sometimes some artists need to kind of like make trouble and have stuff going on in order to kind of like stop their career from flagging. Do you think there might be an element of that with him?
I do. That's what I was alluding to. I think that possibly, if not him, then his publicist feeds on these things or even leaks it, just to keep his name out there and in the news. But I don't want to say that's a fact either because, I don't know what's going on inside his head or what he's really like as a person. It might just be the opposite. Maybe he just wishes everybody would leave him alone,
Right.
So I don't know, but either way, it's the price of being a celebrity, as we've seen so many times,
I think so, and whilst I think there is a line. I've been out in public with people who are celebrities, and you can't have 5 minutes quiet. It's like, can I have an autograph? Can I have a picture? Can I have this? And some people would say that you actually buy into that lifestyle when you start to kind of like, sell your wares, as it were. But where is that line? Where does that line end and begin, do you think?
Well, I think that celebrities should be held to the same standards of behavior that we are held to, but particularly in this case of the story, I don't think he was doing anything that an average person his age wouldn't do, and vice versa for that matter, for the other individual involved. This is a typical thing you could have seen in a Walmart parking lot, Somebody saying something insightful at somebody else's ex or girlfriend or whatever, they attempt to hit, and then the other person answers back. It's really typical of life, basically.
I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall and seen him say, "What's up, bitch?"
Yeah, I mean and then again, the question comes out as to why he didn't hit back, and I don't know the full details of the story. Like if there was people that totally broke it up, or if he was too afraid to hit back, or he's passive. I don't know. The one thing about Justin Bieber that I do not like, I'll tell you this, is when you put yourself out there, and he did in his career. It might be forgotten about now, but in his career, there were many an interview he gave, and I take offense to this as a Christian, where he talked about praying and being a Christian and God and this and that. Well, you don't behave that way out in public. You don't behave that way, period, if you're professing that.
Exactly.
So when you're making yourself out to be this holier than thou Christian, you can't act contrary to it because that just looks bad on Christianity and Christ, So that I kind of take offense to. If he somehow lost his faith, then I wish people that did that would say that. Hey, I'm at a down point first, so that it wouldn't be held, so people don't come back and say, see, look at those Christians,
Right. Exactly. I think the other thing is that everybody wants to make this excuse, and I've seen this in the chat and stuff as well, that people have said, oh, he's very young, and how long can we keep using that excuse for Justin Bieber about his age?
Yeah,
he's 20-something now, isn't he? Let's face it.
That is a very good question, and that's a very good point, Xander, because that only goes so far. There's a time where you have to grow up, and money cannot buy everything, and that's another thing. And I think part of the attraction to Justin Bieber stories is it's like the typical rich, spoiled brat,
Right.
But we don't know his personal life either, and we don't know what he does on his own time and freely, like so many other people. I mean, for all we know, I don't know if you've ever seen that action show, The Arrow, on TV or whatever, but for all we know, he could be a superhero behind the scenes. I'm being silly, but the point is we don't know what he does on his own time, or if he's a kind person or a good person, or what he does in private.
Exactly.
We just hear about the bad,
But let's face it, good works don't sell newspapers. So if Justin Bieber is out reading to the blind twice a week and gives 10% of his money to his local church and buys stuff for his friends and whatever, we're not going to hear about that because that doesn't really sell newspapers as much as him having a punch up in a nightclub in Spain,
Absolutely. Now, I do hear he frequents the same massage parlors that John Travolta does. No, I'm kidding. I'm actually glad Kathy wasn't in the. I'm glad Kathy wasn't in the chat room because she's so pro John Travolta and should be ringing up and verbally kicking your butt for saying anything remotely bad about what's his name, John Travolta. Yes. I did know he's not gay, of course.
No, of course, me either. I'm not. No, definitely not. So I wanted to talk a bit. I don't know if you saw this on social media this week, but there's a story circulating about a woman who was standing in line at the movies waiting to buy her ticket. And her son was standing in front of her, and her shirt was off or open even, and he was drinking milk from her boobs while he waited in line. And so the ticket seller said, "Ma'am, you need to stop that right now." And from behind his bulletproof glass window. Now, only a few people had noticed this was going on, but now that he had drawn attention to them, everyone was looking. And so the woman said, "What's wrong? Never seen a woman's boobs before." And she yelled, waving her free breast at the gawkers. And she said she could feel her son getting uncomfortable and pulled him closer to her body, and his teeth scraped on her boob. "No, honey, don't be scared," she told him, squeezing his ears between her boobs so he couldn't hear them. She said, "I'm a mother and I have every right to feed my child in public. If you have a problem with that, you can avert your eyes, but my son is feeding and will continue to feed until we are both satisfied." None of the patrons came to her defense, and they actually cheered as security escorted her out of the theater. So let me ask you, Tony, is breastfeeding a 12-year-old in public, or anywhere else for that matter, acceptable?
Well, once again, I'm sure I will get flack for this. Honestly, well, let me think long and hard about my words before I say this. I don't think special accommodations for anybody that interfere on the rights of the majority of people and infringe on their rights are justified.
Right.
And I say that whether it's breastfeeding in public, I say that whether it's a disabled child in a restaurant, I say that whether it's a transgendered bathroom. We've come to a point in our society where we're overprotecting the minority at the expense of the majority of people. I mean, monuments are one thing. You can close your eyes or whatever, but, I mean, you can't avoid that. Or planes, overweight people on airplanes. It's like there's this obsession right now with protecting the minority and just overlooking the rights of, the 90 or 80% other people out there. And I think that we've come too far in the other direction, and it's time to think about, well, wait, the majority of people wouldn't do this while still protecting a woman's right to feed her child, while still protecting a transgendered person's right.
Her 12-year-old child, though, Tony.
Yeah. Well, I'm being generous, but I'm extending the issue. 12 years old. That's just over the top. I've never heard of I've never even heard until now of a 12-year-old child being breastfed. I mean. Now,
Joe just said in chat. I have to share this because this is a very interesting point. She said a 12-year-old boy just isn't wired to consider a breast as a food source. Now, what would you think a 12-year-old boy would think of breasts Maybe not his mother's, but it's kind of odd, really, to be doing that. Now, I've heard in some countries that as long as the breast is producing milk, they'll extract the milk and they'll still give it to the child, but not like feed them directly. What's it called? It's called pumping or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly, Joe. Joe just said if he needs the nutrients, give it to him in a cup. Because breast milk is like, it's like the font of all goodness, apparently. And so I'm full of nutrition, et cetera, et cetera. But I still don't want, this is the thing. I don't have a problem with it. I have 4 sisters, and all of them have had kids, and they've all breastfed in front of me. And one of my older sisters never thought anything of whopping her boob out and feeding her kid in front of us. It's totally natural to me, but not her 12-year-old son.
Well,
I'm sorry. It's that's just my perspective on it.
To me, it's a much bigger issue than that, though. And I'll give an analogy, and people can be free to agree or disagree, including you, Xander, of course.
But if we disagree, does that make us Tony-phobic?
No, people might send me hate mail, but we'll see. I mean, if I am, let's say that I naturally have, and let's say it's a natural disability. I have a foul smell. My butt stinks. I've got some rare disease, and my butt stinks really badly. Okay?
Right.
Now, I want to go to a restaurant, and it's not my fault that my butt stinks, because my butt just smells, and nobody can stand the odor. So I want to go out to Chili's, and the tables are close by in proximity, and I want to sit in the bar section, right? Do I have that right to sit in Chili's regardless, or does Chili's have, or what about all those other people around me? Do they have to sit there and smell my butt because my butt stinks and nobody wants to offend me and wants to give me equal rights? So Chili's has to accommodate me and put me in that same section, but all those other people in that section have to put up with that smell. Now, I'm using a silly analogy.
Right. It was obviously a very extreme analogy, but I think the answer to that is that surely the outweigh the kind of the rights of the many. Why would you want to sit there in a restaurant with someone that smelled? I went to a birthday party a few years ago, and I'm a big guy, and I would never leave the house without being clean and getting showered. And I sat next to a guy that was big and really smelled bad. And I think that that's a selfish thing to go to a restaurant knowing that you smell and actually not being bothered about it. I know your analogy was extreme on purpose, but what is your answer to it then? Do you think that it was okay for the person that smelled to go to the restaurant smelling and everybody else should put up with it, or not?
Well, my answer to that is no, and I use this to expound on so many things. Like, okay, we have a lot of people with PTSD now with their guide dogs taking them to restaurants. We have overweight people on airplanes. We have the transgender people. We have people with children with disabilities who do act up because they're nonverbal, unfortunately, in restaurants and create a ruckus or whatever. And all these people are demanding their rights and that the other people around them put up with it and accommodate them. But let's take the guide dog analogy, for instance. Okay, that's fine. So we don't want to trample on your rights. So you have your guide dog in the restaurant. But what about the kid next door to you in the table who's got a severe allergy to a dog? Then see, we don't look at we're trying to protect all these other groups of people and accommodate. And the problem with that is you're overlooking the majority, and that's not the way. That's not the way it's supposed to work in a democracy. Majority is supposed to rule.
But we don't live in a democracy, Tony. We live in a republic.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I had to just get that in because I'm sick of being told that. Even though we operate as a democracy, we live in a republic. And if one more person tells me that, I'm going to spit in someone's eye. But I totally see your point. So let's go full circle. Let's go back to the woman who was breastfeeding her 12-year-old son in line, waiting for tickets for a movie theater. Do you think that was acceptable?
For God's sake, she could go into the bathroom and breastfeed her son. She could do it in the car. She could do it at home. There was no need unless her son was starving and not a 12-year-old child. It's absolutely absurd.
She could have bought him a chocolate bar if he was that hungry.
Yeah.
And I don't know how. I know breast milk is very nutritious, but I don't know how filling it is. Joe just said in chat, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, Mr. Spock. So you don't think it was acceptable then, in a nutshell?
I mean, it's such a delicate balance because you don't want to discriminate against people, but when you're causing the majority to suffer for the minority, that becomes a problem, and that's what's happened. I heard they're mandatory. Dollar theaters are soon to close because I heard the government's going to mandate that dollar theaters now put in audiovisual equipment to accommodate the deaf and the blind. And apparently they don't have the new technology. That's why it's a dollar theater. Well, you know what? I like saving $1 and going to a dollar theater, but they can't afford the new projectors, so they're going to close. And that's that's an example. It's like, okay, so you're trying to make it better for, say, the blind and the deaf and the hard of hearing. I understand that, but at the same time, you're causing other people now to shut down their businesses because you're trying to create an accommodation, and that's what's happening with a lot of these things in this country, and it's sad.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I think this is the thing. I've heard people complain about women with babies breastfeeding and stuff in public, but to me that's ridiculous. That should be totally acceptable, but I don't think it's acceptable to breastfeed a child, a 12-year-old child in public. What do you think should be the cutoff point for public breastfeeding?
I think
35, 40?
I think that if I was, and I can't speak because I'm not a woman, but if I were a
Aren't
woman,
you?
If I were a woman with my child, I wouldn't, perhaps I'd be an old-fashioned woman, but I wouldn't want to breastfeed my child out in public in front of everybody. I don't get what the obsession is. I'd want to do it in private, and I'd want to bond with my child alone, unless there was some circumstance that I needed to do it in public, which becomes a separate matter.
Exactly, I totally agree. So now, Tony, it's time to put you through the new set of quick-fire questions, because you're one of the co-hosts that hasn't done that yet. So get your thinking cap on. All you have to do is tell me the first thing that comes into your mind. We have a team of psychologists in the green room right now getting drunk, and they're going to analyze your answers. So your quick fire round begins now. What questions do you most hate to be asked?
Are you gay?
Next question. Are you gay? All right, next question. Who is your idol?
Ronald Reagan.
Frasier or Seinfeld?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Frasier or Seinfeld?
Don't know.
All right, you can say pass.
Pass.
All right, tacos or sushi?
Tacos.
Madonna and Lady Gaga are drowning. Whose head do you take your foot off first?
Madonna.
Rice or pasta?
Pasta.
You find $50 in church. Do A, keep it, B, give it to the minister, or C, do you give it to the homeless guy outside?
Give it to the homeless guy outside.
Okay. Favorite TV show?
Oh, 24.
Politician most deserving a custard pie in the face, and why?
Ted Cruz.
I'm not saying a word. Oprah or Dr. Phil?
Oprah.
Least favorite movie?
Can't think of the name of it. Oh my gosh.
Don't say anything that I've been in, or you'll be in trouble.
No, I can't think of the name of it. Oh my gosh. All those shaky cam movies.
We'll pass that one then. Which celebrity could you willingly slap?
Justin Bieber.
Favorite TV Muppet?
Miss Piggy.
Miss Piggy indeed. All right, if you found a coin with the year 10 BC on it, would it be valid?
Sure.
It would?
Absolutely. The money we have today isn't valid. That's the whole thing.
Okay, then. All right, last question. Law and Order, Criminal Intent, or Special Victims?
Special Victims.
Absolutely, I totally agree. And that was our quick fire questions round. And once the team of psychologists and psychiatrists have finished putting all of your answers together and their responses, we will send them on the back of a postcard to your HMO. Joe wants to know if Reagan is really your hero, and apparently Reagan wouldn't have watched Seinfeld or Frasier, and nobody ever watched Criminal Intent. I've watched some Criminal Intent, but it doesn't grab me like Special Victims. I get bored very quickly with Criminal Intent. What say you, Tony?
Well, I was a little bit over-exaggerating, but yes, Ronald Reagan was not the ultra-conservative he was made out to be. There's the myth of Ronald Reagan, and there's the historical Ronald Reagan who fought for immigration reform and would never let this be happening on our borders, would be taking care of children right now. So in response to that question, yes, but the historical Reagan, not the mythological Reagan that the conservative movement has created today. Big difference.
Okay. Well, Law and Order Special Victims leads us nicely into our last topic. Get ready for the return of Olivia Benson on Law and Order SVU. At the end of the last season, Benson, a.k.a. Mariska Hargitay, was named acting commander of SVU, and she became the court-appointed custodial guardian, or orphan baby Noah Porter for a trial period of 1 year. The challenge for Benson will be the same challenge for millions of working mothers, including Mariska herself, experiencing daily how to juggle job responsibilities while being caretaker at home, says SVU executive producer Warren Leak. Like all moms, badass or not, she'll multitask to prioritize and put up with crankiness at home and at work. Are we still missing a Stabler? That is my question, a.k.a. even Chris Maloney. SVU opens its new season in September on the 24th on NBC. So, what do you think about all of that?
I'm curious how much you got paid by NBC to do the plot. No, I'm kidding. I think we're missing a Stabler.
Unfortunately, I don't get paid for any of these plugs. I wish I did. Are you eating potato chips in the background there?
Me? No, I am not eating potato chips. Careful when you ask me what I'm doing in the background, though. No.
Yeah, I don't think we want to know that, not live on air.
I think that the show degenerated since Stabler left. I think he was half the show, quite honestly, and honestly, it hasn't really worked the same since then. They did the same thing with the original Law and Order series, and they kept redoing the cast, and that's what plays these out. I really wish they would bring back Stabler, basically.
Do you think there's a possibility that they're going to do that? Because I know that it was Chris Maloney's decision to leave. Now, maybe if they offered him more money, he'd come back. Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, these new people are okay, but it's just not the same. They've turned it into something that it's not. And whilst I still like it, I don't like it as much as I used to.
Same here. I mean, it would be like taking Jack Bauer out of 24 almost. You know, that's the analogy there. It would still go on, but it wouldn't be the same. And I just wonder what happened that he left so permanently, and they won't even, because normally shows like that bring somebody back for a guest appearance or mention the name. It's like totally just like gone. I wonder if something didn't happen behind the scenes that NBC's not telling everybody about that caused that, you know? That's always been my wondering.
We're trying to get Mariska Hargitay to come on the show, so maybe if we're lucky enough to get her, we will ask her about that, see if she will tell us a bit more. But I think I'm going to miss Don Cragen too. You know, I think that Olivia as the boss is going to be good, but again, I think we like what we like. We get used to stuff, and when they change it, it sometimes alters the show so much.
Yeah, I mean, they did that.
Tony, what are you doing? I'm intrigued. Are you wrapping gifts or something?
No, I'm just in my home, sitting here talking to you.
Okay. Joe saying in the chat room that Joe saying in the chat room that Stable had a funny show on Fox, but it got canceled. Was that where he played a gym teacher or something? I seem to remember some ad with him strutting around in shorts, showing off his hairy legs. But yeah, I definitely think that they need to bring back Stabler. Joe says she likes the temp boss they had when Olivia was in trouble. Yeah, he was very interesting. He was an interesting character. But I think far too often what these TV shows do, they do what the hell they like. They don't bow to public pressure, and I think that that's dangerous because when you change shows too much, people are not interested. People lose interest, you know? And I wonder if this will be the last series of SVU if Stabler doesn't come back. Because apparently they've stopped making Law and Order, haven't they? They're not doing any more new ones of Law and Order.
I think so. In fact, that's what happened. I used to love the show Revolution when it first came on first season. And by second season, me and all the fans were like, whoa, you totally changed this. You went crazy with it. They didn't listen.
Right.
The ratings dropped, but didn't make it to a third season because they just didn't listen to the fans. We were watching one thing, and then they totally did like an about face with everything, and it was like people were talking about it. Like you said, they were writing the network, giving their input. It was online. It was no secret. People were not happy with where they were taking the show, and by the end of that season, it was like the ratings killed it.
And then they wonder why things get canceled, you know?
Yep. In fact, NCIS, which is another one of my favorite shows, actually, is coming to its near end, I think. I mean, that's why they're doing another spinoff with New Orleans, which should be interesting. I love that actor, too. I think it's Scott Bakula. And they're trying to just keep that going, but it seems like NCIS might have had its day, too, after a while. You know, and I love the show. But it's just...
Did you see Scott Bakula when he did Star Trek, the Star Trek series? I can't think what it was called.
Oh, yeah, Enterprise it was. I loved that series, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'm a real Trekkie, but I didn't really get a lot out of that, unfortunately. But I do love Scott Bakula from as far back as Quantum Leap. You know, I remember watching that as a kid and thinking what a fabulous actor he was. But one show that's coming back in September that should really interest you, Joe, is Doctor Who. Do you watch Doctor Who?
Ooh, I do. I haven't watched it in a while, to be honest, but it's a great show.
Well, it's not been on. That's why it's been on hiatus because the doctor changed. They have a new doctor now, and his name is, I can't think what his name is. It will come to me. Maybe someone in chat can tell me. It will come to me though. But you see, I was worried each time when they got Matt, the last Doctor, to play it. I was impressed from the word go, but I just wonder if this new Doctor will be able to hold our interest. You know.
I think that it's a show, honestly, that holds the interest. I mean, some doctors, everybody's got their favorite doctor going all the way back to the origin of the series. Personally, in 2 years' time frame, I might suggest a new Doctor Who. I'm thinking Dr. Obama might be a good replacement since he's everybody's superhero to save the world. Perhaps
that would be an interesting concept.
Yes.
Because they've never had a black doctor, have they? The doctor has always been white.
Actually.
Or a female doctor, because
he
can morph into his metamorphosis is not limited, is it? He can morph into a man or a woman.
Yes, that would actually be interesting. A female or a black Doctor Who, that's a real good place to take a storyline when you think about it.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that that would definitely be... what about a black female? There was an actress that was in an episode where... Did you see the one called The Doctor, where there was this guy, like in the 18th century, who had a TARDIS called the Balloon? Peter Capaldi, Joe just reminded me in chat. Yeah, he is. He's actually in a series called The Musketeers that's on BBC America right now. He is a brilliant actor, but I wanted them to do a younger Doctor again. You know, as young as Matt, whatever his name was. But it remains to be seen how good this guy is going to be. I think it's all about the writing, because if the actor, whether the actor is brilliant or not, if the writing is not very good, it really detracts from the whole thing, I think. But Doctor Who's writers have been pretty much consistent as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good show, and it's got a lot of good themes, and part of the fun of it for me is some of it has some really deep themes, and others are just kind of silly. You know, it's like you never know what to expect with Doctor Who, and it's part of the fun of it. You know, sometimes it blows my mind with the deeper themes and this and that, and other times it's like, oh, that was funny.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it really does need to keep you interested, you know, and it does, for me, it does do that. But I'm always just afraid that the next time they're gonna, the next time they change it, because after the other Scottish guy, what's his name? I can't think what his name is. The guy that was before Matt Smith. The guy that was before him was brilliant, and I vowed that I would never watch it, but I had to watch it just to see. David. Is it David Tennant?
Yes.
Joe's just saying. After David Tennant, I was like, no, I'm never going to watch it again, because I'm a real Whovian. When it was on in the 80s, I used to watch it then, and then when they revamped it and brought it back, I was like, oh, this is fabulous. I really want to kind of get into this. But let's see. Let's wait and see. So we're coming to the end of our time together today, Tony. Tell people where they can find you on the interweb.
The interweb. Oh, my gosh. That would be at the Full Story. I believe it's 2014. As usual, I have not been on to update in about a week or two, but I will be doing that next week. So anybody that wants to see the Twitter feed will have to wait about a week to get an update on that. But I will be on talking probably about this Palestinian issue if it's still in the news, and the Ukraine and some other things.
I can't see it changing overnight, to be honest. I think that we're still going to be talking about this for a few months, unfortunately, and I do pray for peace, but I'm concerned that it's gone on for so long, it's going to take a lot to undo it all. But thank you so much for joining us today and stepping in at the last minute, Tony. It was a pleasure to talk to you. I hope you'll come back and join us again very soon, and give our love to Kiko and have a fabulous week.
You too. Thanks for having me on, Xander.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tony. Take care. Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, that was a broadcaster, libertarian, and freethinker, the fabulous Tony Losacco. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks to everyone who has made today's shows possible. Thanks to Tony. Make sure you go out and check his Twitter page. That's Full Story 2014. Thanks to you for listening. Thanks to everybody in chat. Thanks to Joe. I don't know where Kathy got to today, but I hope she's okay. Yes, I love Scottish men and Scottish accents too, Joe. Thank you so much to you for joining us. We will be back with you next week, so thanks for listening, and I love you all. Take care. Bye.